I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to answer without thinking. Have you ever felt real déjà vu? Not the casual kind, but the kind that hits your chest before your brain can catch up? Have you ever noticed synchronicities so precise they felt timed, scripted, almost impossible to dismiss? Have you ever felt reality glitch for a second, like time bent, stretched, or skipped, and no one around you reacted? If you've experienced that, you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're not imagining things. You may be perceiving something most people never slow down enough to notice. And here's the part no one prepares you for. People who sense these things often feel isolated, not socially, existentially. Like you're operating on a different frequency, surrounded by people who don't hear the signal at all. That loneliness isn't a flaw. It's feedback. It's what happens when your perception starts tuning into layers of reality that most minds are conditioned to filter out in order to feel safe. Modern science actually has a name for part of this conversation. It's called quantum consciousness, and it exists right at the edge where physics, neuroscience, and lived human experience collide. At the smallest scales of reality, the universe does not behave like a solid machine. It behaves like a field of probabilities. A quantum field where outcomes don't exist until something interacts with them, observes them, participates. That's not philosophy, that's physics. The observer effect isn't a metaphor. In controlled experiments, observation changes outcomes. Measurement alters behavior. Reality responds. And once you really sit with that fact, an uncomfortable question begins to form. If observation helps shape reality at the quantum level, what role does human awareness actually play? This is where the mainstream story starts to fracture. Because the deeper researchers went, the more the implications began to sound in their own words. Too metaphysical. One well-documented paper exploring non-local aspects of consciousness was reportedly rejected 14 times, not because the math was wrong, not because the data failed, but because it challenged a core assumption science relies on, that reality exists independent of perception. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's institutional reflex. Here's why this matters to you. Your subconscious mind doesn't just react to reality. It filters it. Your attention, your beliefs, your emotional patterns influence what you notice, what you reinforce, what becomes real enough to shape your life. This is why two people can live in the same city, the same year, the same events, and experience entirely different worlds. You may have felt this during a spiritual awakening, even if you never used that language. A moment when old explanations stopped working, when your sense of self loosened, when the question wasn't, what do I believe? But why does reality feel thinner than it used to? People going through this often notice changes in vibration and frequency, not as mystical buzzword, but as lived experience. Your tolerance for noise drops. Your sensitivity increases. You start noticing patterns that were always there, hidden beneath habit and distraction. A hidden reality quietly running underneath the surface. And here's the most unsettling part. Quantum physics does not describe a single fixed outcome universe. It describes multiple potential outcomes existing simultaneously until interaction locks one in. Experiments involving the measurement problem, decoherence, and the double slit have been pointing at this for decades. The math is real. The implications are uncomfortable. That raises a question no one has fully answered yet. What happens to the possibilities that aren't chosen? This video isn't here to give you a neat answer. It's here to show you why that question exists at all. So stay with me. This isn't for everyone. But if something in you is already tightening, already recognizing this conversation, stay, because the next part is where things stop being abstract and start getting personal. Subscribe if you want quantum reality explained in a way that actually changes how you see your life. And stay until the end. I'll give you one question that turns this from science talk into a personal turning point. In 1801, Thomas Young first demonstrated it with light. Decades later, quantum physicists repeated it with electrons, one particle at a time. When particles pass through two slits, you don't get two clean piles on the screen. You get an interference pattern, a wave-like signature, even when particles are fired individually, building the pattern dot by dot. Before measurement, each particle behaves as if multiple paths are real at once. This result shattered the idea of a solid, predictable universe. When detectors are added to observe which slit the particle goes through, the interference pattern disappears. The system changes behavior the moment information is locked in. Observation collapses possibility. That isn't philosophy. It's verified physics. The observer effect shows that perception alters outcomes at the most fundamental level of reality. Now connect that to your experience. If nature itself operates on multiple possibilities first, why do you feel trapped in a single life? Why do moments of déjà vu feel layered, not vague? Why do synchronicities sometimes feel precise enough to be unsettling? Your subconscious mind may be recognizing something your conscious narrative was never taught to process. That reality emerges from probability through interaction. At the quantum field level, energy exists as potential until engagement selects an outcome. Consciousness expansion can feel destabilizing because your perception starts noticing the gap between possibility and experience. That gap feels like a crack, a hidden reality briefly showing itself. In 1931, Nobel Prize-winning physicist Max Planck stated, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. Matter is derivative from consciousness." He wasn't speculating. He was summarizing decades of experimental insight. But they don't teach that in school, because if consciousness participates in reality creation, the world is not a machine you simply obey. So sit with this. If reality isn't solid until it's observed, and perception shapes outcome, what part of your life feels like it could have gone another way? At the end of this video, comment one moment when your life split into before and after. Don't write it yet. Hold it. Because once you see what physics actually allows, this stops being theoretical, and that's where it gets stranger. In 1957, physicist Hugh Everett III submitted his doctoral thesis at Princeton University, proposing what he called the relative state formulation of quantum mechanics. His conclusion was radical and precise. The wave function never collapses. Instead of one outcome being selected, all possible outcomes continue to exist, branching into non-interacting states. This later became known as the many worlds interpretation. Everett wasn't dismissed for bad math. His equations were sound. What disturbed the scientific community were the implications. If the equations are taken seriously, reality does not choose one path. It allows all of them. So why don't you experience multiple realities at once? The answer is decoherence. As soon as a quantum system interacts with its environment, the overlap between possible outcomes is destroyed almost instantly. The branches stop interfering. Reality appears classical, solid, singular, not because alternatives vanished, but because perception can no longer access them. This is not mysticism. It's a well-documented consequence of quantum field interactions. Now connect this to your inner life. Human consciousness doesn't experience existence as a smooth line. It experiences forks. Regret that feels physical. Relief mixed with loss. Memories that feel attached to a version of you that no longer exists. When synchronicities appear too precise, or déjà vu feels layered instead of vague, your subconscious mind may be responding to probability structures it was never taught to name. This is why spiritual awakening often feels destabilizing. Your vibration shifts, your frequency changes. The hidden reality beneath habits and routines becomes harder to ignore. Consciousness expansion doesn't add something new. It removes a filter. In 1931, Nobel Prize-winning physicist Max Planck stated plainly, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. Matter is derivative from consciousness." He wasn't speculating. He was summarizing what the data implied. But they don't teach that in school, because a worldview where perception participates in reality, creation doesn't scale well inside systems built on control. So when you hear multiple realities, don't imagine science fiction. Imagine probability, perception, and choice entangled at a deeper level than you were ever taught. At the end, comment one word: regret, relief, or fear, because if this interpretation holds, this is where everything changes. Here's the part no equation ever prepared you for. People don't become obsessed with multiple realities because it's abstract or intellectual. They become obsessed because it mirrors something painfully human, the presence of the unlived life, the version of you who stayed, the version who left, the version who said yes, the version who walked away. Quantum physics didn't invent that feeling. It gave it a framework. In 1983, neuroscientist Benjamin Libet ran experiments at the University of California, San Francisco, measuring brain activity milliseconds before conscious decisions. What he found was disturbing. The brain initiated action before awareness of choice appeared. Consciousness arrived late. Perception followed reality, not the other way around. That result shattered the idea that your conscious self is steering from the front. Now place that next quantum theory. At the level of the quantum field, outcomes exist as probabilities until interaction stabilizes one. Attention matters. Observation matters. Energy organizes itself around repetition. If your subconscious mind is constantly rehearsing regret, fear, or identity conflict, those frequencies don't stay internal. They shape what becomes stable in your lived experience. This is why déjà vu feels emotional, not intellectual. Why synchronicities arrive when you're already questioning your path. Why spiritual awakening often begins with grief. You're not sensing fantasy. You're sensing contrast between branches your nervous system remembers and the one you're reinforcing now. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Eugene Wigner admitted that quantum mechanics cannot be fully formulated without reference to consciousness. He said that openly. But they don't teach that in school because a mind that understands perception participates in reality. Creation is harder to program. So here's the quiet empowerment. You can't control every possible branch, but you can control what you feed with attention, habit, and belief in this one. Stability follows focus. Reality follows repetition. And this is where it gets stranger. At the end, comment, I choose _ and name one belief you're done reinforcing. So let's slow this down for a moment, because everything you've just heard, the experiments, the equations, the admissions, was never meant to be consumed as trivia. It was meant to rearrange perception. You've watched psychology crack certainty, neuroscience expose how awareness lags behind action, and quantum physics remove the idea of a single fixed outcome. None of this was random. It was a progression, guiding you to one quiet realization. Reality doesn't happen to you. It happens through you. Quantum consciousness isn't mystical language. It's what emerges when the quantum field refuses to behave without interaction. Observation matters. Attention matters. Frequency matters. Your subconscious mind has always been collapsing possibilities into lived experience, shaping reality through repetition, belief, and emotional energy. You weren't missing power. You were taught to forget you had it. That strange feeling you've been carrying lately, the sense that something feels off, thinner, unstable, isn't a defect. It's feedback, a shift in vibration, a change in frequency. Consciousness expansion feels uncomfortable because the old narrative can't fully hold you anymore. Spiritual awakening isn't blissful certainty. It's friction. It's perception stretching beyond the story you were handed. Now sit with this final disturbance without rushing to resolve it. If consciousness participates in reality creation, then time, separation, even death do not mean what you are taught they mean. That doesn't make life meaningless. It makes it deeper. And this is why this knowledge has always been softened, fragmented, labeled too philosophical, too metaphysical for mainstream education. Awakened minds cannot be easily controlled. You didn't find this video by accident. Alignment always feels like coincidence until it doesn't. Thousands are waking up simultaneously, asking the same questions, sensing the same hidden reality beneath the surface. This space isn't entertainment. It's a meeting point. You are not alone in this. Before anything else happens, I want you to act intentionally. In the comments, write one sentence only. I am the observer, not as belief, as declaration. Public declaration is a quantum act. It collapses intention. It feeds the collective frequency of this channel and draws in consciousness operating on the same signal. This is a ritual of alignment, not a metric. Feel this in your body, not just your mind. That quickening in your chest isn't anxiety. It's recognition. Something has shifted permanently. You can't unsee it now. What happens next depends on a choice you make in the next few seconds. And the next video, I was so wrong about quantum computing, is where the choice gets sharper. Stay with me. If this hit you, like the video so YouTube pushes it to the right people. Subscribe, because the next episode will flip what you think quantum computing really does. And share this with someone who keeps saying, I feel like my life could have gone another way. Clicks matter, but your comment matters more, because words lock intention into reality.